Old and new friends, welcome. And again, so glad to be here with you once again. When I asked what you all would be interested in focusing on, what I heard back was had to do with the fact that many of you are very focused on what's happening in Ukraine, as am I, and those of us in our global community, the Gaia Mandala Global Healing Community. We've focused our meditations there as well. And that this is such a time of crisis in the world in so many ways. And so how do we be with that from a deeper perspective, of a meditative perspective that, in a sense, connects the inner and the outer experience that we have in these times? So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and then I'll lead a meditation. And then, as Manon, you said, you all will go back into meditation for another period, and then we'll come back together. And if there's any reflections or questions or comments that want to be shared, we can do that. So, as it's probably obvious to everyone here, we're living in a powerful evolutionary moment of life on Earth. The changes that are happening are catalyzing even more changes, right? And the systems, the living systems that we have taken for granted are collapsing, breaking down. Social and political systems, environmental ecosystems, etc. Authoritarianism is rising. The threat of nuclear war in Ukraine is ever present. Not to mention that the terrible war that's just ongoing there now. These things are just, in a way, unthinkable. And I'm sure many of us would rather not think about it. So we just, ignore as best we can. Meanwhile, our survival and that of all of the animals and plants and rivers and oceans is in question. So there's just countless ways in which life on Earth is severely threatened right now. But simultaneously, these times of crisis are providing us with a really powerful opportunity. We're being presented with the possibility of participating in a collective awakening. Because all of these things are forcing us to pay attention, to not ignore the situation, and to wake up to how we can participate in this moment effectively and compassionately. So we have the chance to become a part of a critical mass of humanity that recognizes that we're not separate from each other or from the web of life, the entire web of life. That we're each a little facet of the whole, with a unique gift to offer that is only ours to give, because each of us is such a beautiful, unique expression of the whole. And we have a purpose to fulfill. So if we choose to engage with the call of these times, we have an opportunity to wake up and be the change. It's what Buddha Shakyamuni was calling to us all the time, calling us to all the time. Are you with me? So good. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's why we're here. That's why we're here. As hard as it is to be present with this crisis as opportunity, this is the moment. This is, we're alive now, as Joanna Macy says, we're alive now. What an amazing time. So let's make the most of it. The purpose of our dharma practice is to cultivate the ground of our being so that we may awaken and realize our own innate nature. And I use the word nature very consciously. This is our true source of love and understanding and compassion and wisdom that dwells within each of us naturally. And accessing that, giving that gift, is the greatest thing that we can possibly do in this precious human life. Offering our compassion and our kindness to others because we care is something that humans can do for each other and for the earth. We feel the cries of earth and all her living beings, and we suffer with them. Compassion to suffer with. We suffer with all of those things, whether we're conscious of it or not, because we're all connected. So this opportunity is to turn our attention with that feeling of caring to the healing of our world. And there's the big calls, and then there's the little ones that just happen in our own backyard. And there's no right way here. We each have a different way of engaging. But it's time to engage. And our Dharma practice is a way of engaging. There's nothing insignificant about that at all, because it's catalyzing, it's facilitating this awakening, which is part of the critical mass, right, that is needed to make the shift, to make the change all over the world. Awakening to our true nature. And so we practice day after day to become stable in that realization. And as we do, we build our spiritual muscles and become strong. And that helps us to face what's hard. We need to be strong to turn into these difficult things that are arising in our world with energy and with equanimity. So in the practice of meditation, we are invited to take a breath, slow down. Like, I don't know if you all know who Bayo Akomolafe is, a Nigerian writer and teacher. He says in the Nigerian tradition, they say, how does it go? Things are urgent. We must slow down everything. The urgency of the situation means that we must slow down, or we just get all caught up in that urgency, and it doesn't help. So that's what happens when we stop and practice. Take a breath, slow down, and notice our constant reactivity, that has become so ingrained in how we live, these deeply embedded habits that govern our lives unconsciously most of the time and don't help, but just keep us going around and around and around. So we, in our practice, we create the space to choose another way, to recognize those habits and to choose another way, a way of understanding, of trust and love, a way that feeds the spirit of what we want to see in the world and deepens our faith that transformation and awakening is possible, because we can do it. We do it every time we sit down, every time we take a conscious breath, every time we return to the present moment. And all that stuff is there. All those scary things are still there. But to respond to them instead of react to them, this is the call. This is what's needed. And I feel Gaia is asking us for this, because as our elders, our indigenous elders would remind us, we have to live in harmony with the earth and with each other. And we have to realize that we're not alone. We are in this relationship to all of life together, no matter who we are or where we are. So this is one of the beauties about Sangha, right? Where we have the support of each other to do this work, to make these changes, because together we're strong. We're building that muscle together. It's hard to do it on our own, all by ourselves. I speak from experience on that, and I know I'm not alone in how hard it is. Until, once the habit of the practice is in place, then it's easier. But transforming those old habits is not so easy. And we need each other for this, and we need all of us. I mean, all around the whole planet, to face and deal with and transform these patterns that are creating, violence in the world, school shootings, nuclear weapons, the destruction of the planet, whatever it is, the things that we're living with today that are so devastating to life, literally. So, but we can point the finger out there, or we can turn inside, and part of what we're looking at is the relationship between the inner and the outer. So we begin with ourselves, which is really the only place we can begin. We know this from addictions, or codependencies. We want it to happen out there, but actually all we can do is focus right here. And then it ripples out. It does. So we begin over and over. We begin anew every day. And with each breath and with every step, we choose to take that time out to reset those patterns. And then we can set out again on the path of awakening, the path of transformation and healing. And every time we stop and take another breath and return to the present moment, just like that, we come back to our true selves, to our own true nature. It's not out there, it's right here. We are capable of stopping the ongoing habit of our minds that consumes our life force energy. And one day we wake up and we're sick in bed, or we're, on our deathbed, and we go, oh my God, what happened? How'd this happen? I didn't realize, So let's not do that. Let's take advantage of the time we have now. And when we find our breath, we align ourselves automatically with the life force of Mother Earth. And that right there is enough to just transform everything and bring the renewal that we need when we're afraid, when we're suffering, when we're in pain. I mean, conscious breathing heals trauma. I know this from working with my friends in Liberia who are suffering from civil war, suffering terribly from PTSD from civil war. Now, the whole world is suffering from trauma, but the breath can calm that reactivity down. So don't think that a meditation focusing on breathing is simplistic, because it's not. It's right there at the center of life. It also helps in times of crisis and uncertainty to call on the wise ones, to invite their help. And again, we think we're just in this all alone. And we're so isolated with the pandemic too. But they're there if we call on them. They want us to call on them. And of course, they like it if we make offerings to them and then ask for their help. Because one of the ways we can heal our world is by remembering the reciprocal nature of life on earth and transform our habit of just taking and taking and taking without giving back. So this is something I've learned through the earth treasure vases, which is this offering to the earth, to all of those unseen beings. And they love it and they respond. And I've had the experience of making offerings in the dry riverbed and the rain coming. So, anything is possible. We have to remind ourselves of that and to place ourselves in the context of something or someone, I don't know how you think about it, but something larger than ourselves. Because we're also transforming our attachment to a sense of self, our self-clinging, our identification with this I, me, mine thing, which is such a obstacle. We go through our lives living as if we're so important. And yes, each one of us is important to the web of life. But we have to put ourselves into the context of this of the web of life, of this something so much larger than ourselves, to see through the eyes that responds instead of reacts out of that self-clinging. Do you know what I mean by this? This is what leads to that non-dual experience, right? That we talk about in our meditations, is when the self falls away and we're left with just what is, that is unconditioned and vast and inseparable from everything else. So we think we have all the answers and that we have to do it alone. And it's so overwhelming. And oh my God, I don't know, the world's coming to an end, but I'm just going to go watch TV, In fact, when our identification with this sense of self falls away, facilitated by the practice of meditation, we can open to something, as I say, so much larger than ourselves, this limited, conditioned view that keeps us locked into these tiny little ways of seeing things. We take refuge in this spirit of those who inspire us, including the trees and the animals. We temper our egos, and something new can happen. It's like that crack in everything that lets the light in. It's that light, that beautiful light of awareness. So we're creating the conditions for this when we take our seat and light a candle, offer some incense, maybe sprinkle some cornmeal outside for those invisible ones who want to be fed. Take a breath and call on our own Buddha nature, call on the Great Spirit, the web of life, Gaia, the Holy Spirit, the Great Mystery, all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the sources of refuge that have shown us the way in this life. In other words, who put us on the path, who open the way to understanding and trust and love, and to that vast beauty that is all around when we can get out of our own ways. And from that seat of what we call calm abiding in Buddhism, and just resting in awareness itself, we really can see the way, because everything becomes more clear from that place. And then we know how to respond in an effective way, in a way that serves. So with the support of all of our ancestors and elders and lineage masters and all those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, we no longer feel alone. We know that, and when we also include in that the trees and the mycelium and the birds, and the wind that rustles the leaves, they're bodhisattvas too. and each other, each of you. We are this to each other when we are aligned in this way. Community is more important than ever. And when we have that feeling of connection, then we're more capable of leaning into the uncertainty, engaging the discomfort, inquiring into our fear. It's like the curiosity about that is available to us more. And the possibility of exploring the things that scare us, like inquiring, what is this? Fear is such a powerful signpost. It's a natural response to some of the things that are going on in the world. It's not bad. So when we have when we're settled, in our seat, and we can invite the fear forward, or, who are you? What do you want me to know? And then to just relax and open to the response that comes in that inquiry, not from here, not from the thinking mind, but from a deeper place that is a place of knowing. And we recognize that it's a place of knowing when we're not thinking, but an insight comes and we go, right, aha, thank you, that's it. I know what to do next. I understand what that person is saying now. I feel what it must be like to be them. I can have compassion. And we just breathe over and over, again and again, to stay present with any feelings that might get triggered, that are activating. And just, breathe through it. Don't push it away, but just embrace what's arising with awareness and keep inquiring. And allow ourselves to be surprised. A lot of it will sometimes fall away. And not, it's like, oh, well, that's not important. But then what is important comes up very clearly. And or some new understanding arises. It's surprising. And if the reactivity does, or the feeling of being triggered, it comes up in the practice, then you can just say, okay, next time we'll come back to this. I'm not ready, because you want to be able to stay with the breath, to stay relaxed in the face of what that is, and just be with it. But if it starts to take over and it's too much, then you just put the rock back on the hole and come back another time when you feel more stable. We have to take care of ourselves in the face of these things, I've been having a really hard time lately with everything. And it was the shooting in the school, the big shooting in Texas, that just sent me over the edge with everything else. And, battling with despair. And then I watched this film, which I hope you have seen. And if you haven't, that you will see. It's called Mission Joy. And it's with Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama. And it is so wonderful. I can't recommend it enough. Because in the face of the suffering that the two of them have lived through, the apartheid in South Africa and the Chinese occupation of Tibet, these two express more joy than anyone else on the planet. Yeah. The film really makes it clear through their example how when you're kind to others, you become more joyful yourself. It's contagious. It feels good to give joy to other beings, to help them. And as hard as it may be, being kind, even to those who treat us badly, transforms everything. It's one of the four immeasurables, sympathetic joy. We're made for goodness. I think it was Arch Tutu says, we're made for this. And it's true. Compassion is our great gift to the world. And we can't forget it. We get so caught up in ourselves. But when we give that joy, we feel much better. And we practice it until it comes naturally. So that's part of the practice, like learning to play the piano or working our muscles. So Thich Nhat Hanh is another one. He's my great teacher. He gave us the 14 precepts of the Order of Interbeing, or the mindfulness trainings of the Order of Interbeing. And the 7th precept talks about cultivating joy in order to facilitate the work of transformation in the depths of our consciousness. So he's saying we need to practice touching that wondrous, refreshing, and healing elements that are inside of us and all around us in order to be able to have the energy to face into the difficult things that are in us and around us. If we don't have that source of joy and capacity to recognize the beauty around us, we just fall into depression or, get overwhelmed. So we take the time as part of our practice to notice the blue sky, to smell the roses, to smile at the person in the line in front of us at the store. And his most famous mindfulness poem, or Gata, says, breathing in, I calm body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. And we practice smiling. Even if we don't feel like it, we still practice it. And we tell ourselves this present moment is wonderful. It's the only moment. So let's make it wonderful, let's really arrive. And that energy ripples out and transforms the world.